In the icy fjords of Scandinavia, a princess clutches her crown, knowing one fateful marriage could shatter empires or forge legends in blood. Welcome to the story. Why did Viking princesses trade crowns for dangerous marriages? Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and enjoy this gripping tale. If you're enjoying the story, subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us. Let's step into the rugged, wind-swept world of the Vikings, where every choice could mean glory or ruin. The Viking Age, roughly from 793 to 1066 AD, was a time when the Norse people of Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, carved out a legacy as warriors, traders, and explorers. Their longships, sleek and dragon-proud, sliced through icy waves to reach distant shores, from the bazaars of Constantinople to the uncharted coasts of North America. But this wasn't just a tale of raids and plunder. Back home, Viking society was a complex web of clans, bound by loyalty, honor, and the constant struggle to survive in a land where winters bit like wolves, and summers demanded relentless work on farms or fishing boats. Power wasn't just fought for on the battlefield, it was woven through cunning alliances, often sealed by the hands of women in strategic marriages. Viking women, especially those born into noble families, held a surprising amount of influence in this male-dominated world. Unlike many of their European counterparts, they could own property, inherit land, though often half as much as their brothers, and even initiate divorces under certain conditions, such as neglect or abuse. The sagas, those gripping oral tales later written down in medieval Iceland, paint vivid pictures of women like Aud the Deep-Minded, who, after losing her husband and son, led her family across the seas to settle in Iceland, managing vast estates with unmatched resolve. Noble women, including princesses, were often the glue holding clans together. Their marriages weren't about candlelit romance, but about forging alliances to secure peace, wealth, or military support. A princess's hand in marriage could turn enemies into allies, or strengthen a king's claim to disputed lands. Take Thyra, the wife of King Gorm the Old of Denmark, as an example. Her marriage, though shrouded in the hazy details of saga lore, likely tied two powerful families together, stabilizing a fledgling Danish kingdom. The sagas hint that she was more than a passive bride, possibly advising Gorm and influencing decisions that shaped early Denmark. But these unions were high-stakes gambles. A failed alliance could spark vendettas, with entire clans drawn into cycles of revenge. The famous Laxdæla saga tells of Gudrun Osvifursdottir, whose marriages and betrayals fueled decades of feuds, showing how a woman's choices could ripple through generations. Marriages were diplomatic chess moves, and princesses were the queens on the board, powerful but vulnerable. Archaeology gives us more clues about these women's roles. The Oseberg ship burial, discovered in Norway and dating to the 9th century, revealed the grave of a high-status woman, possibly a queen or priestess, buried with a magnificent ship, a carved cart, and tools for weaving and household management. The presence of such riches suggests she held authority, perhaps overseeing religious rituals or commanding resources. Another find, the Birka grave BJ 581, once thought to be a male warrior's tomb, was recently confirmed to belong to a woman buried with weapons and horses, hinting at her role in military or leadership circles. These artifacts show that Viking women, especially those of high rank, weren't just background figures. They were active players in their society's power dynamics. So, why would a princess trade the security of her crown for a marriage fraught with danger? It came down to the Viking world's obsession with legacy and survival. A well-placed marriage could secure a clan's future, expand its influence, or end a bloody feud, but the cost was steep. Leaving home, navigating rival families, and risking betrayal or war if the alliance soured. These women weren't just trading vows, they were stepping into a high-stakes game where their wits and courage could shape empires. As we move forward, we'll dive into how these princesses use their influence to navigate the treacherous expectations of their roles, turning marriage into a weapon of power. In the flickering light of a longhouse, a Viking princess stands before a crowd, her hands bound with a ceremonial cord, pledging her life to a stranger from a rival clan. These marriage vows were more than personal promises. They were contracts etched in the hopes of peace and power. For Viking princesses, weddings were grand spectacles, steeped in ritual and meaning, but they carried the weight of entire kingdoms. The sagas tell us of women like Ragnhild, daughter of King Sigurd Hart, whose marriage to Halfdan the Black was said to unite warring factions in Norway. Such unions were orchestrated by families to secure alliances, but the bride often walked a tightrope between loyalty to her kin and her new husband's clan, knowing one misstep could unravel everything. These marriages were often negotiated with meticulous care, like a merchant haggling over furs in a bustling market. A princess's dowry might include land, silver, or even a fleet of ships, signaling her family's wealth and commitment to the alliance. In return, the groom's family offered a bride price, a gesture to honor the bride's status and seal the bond. The ceremony itself was a blend of practicality and mysticism. The couple exchanged swords, hers from her father, his from his kin, symbolizing mutual protection. A feast followed, with mead flowing and schools reciting tales of gods and heroes. But beneath the revelry lay a stark truth. The princess was now a bridge between two worlds, expected to navigate tensions with grace and cunning. Consider Astrid, a lesser-known figure from the Heimskringla saga, who married a chieftain to secure her father's claim to disputed lands in Sweden. Her role wasn't just to bear children, but to act as a diplomat, whispering counsel to her husband during tense negotiations with her own kin. Yet the sagas also hint at the dangers she faced. Rumors of betrayal could turn her into a scapegoat, blamed for any rift between clans. Another example is Gyda, who, according to legend, refused to marry Harald Fairhair until he unified Norway, showing how some princesses leveraged their marriages to demand power or prestige, even at great personal risk. Archaeological evidence supports these stories. In Denmark, a runestone from Jelling, erected around 960 AD, commemorates a royal woman, possibly Thyra, as Denmark's strength, suggesting her marriage played a pivotal role in consolidating power. Such inscriptions show how princesses were celebrated as linchpins of stability, yet their lives were fraught with uncertainty. If a husband died in battle or a treaty collapsed, the widow might face exile or worse, her status tied to the fragile threads of politics. These women learned to wield soft power through persuasion, loyalty, or even subtle manipulation to protect their families and themselves. The stakes of these marriages were sky high, and the princesses knew it. They stepped into their new roles with eyes wide open, aware that their vows could forge empires or spark wars. Next, we'll explore how these women turned their precarious positions into opportunities for influence, shaping their destinies with every carefully chosen word and deed. In the smoky halls of a Viking chieftain's longhouse, a princess sits quietly, her sharp eyes tracking every word spoken by the men around her. She's not just a wife, she's a strategist, weaving her influence into the fabric of her new clan's decisions. Viking princesses, thrust into marriages that tied rival families or distant kingdoms, didn't simply adapt to their roles, they mastered them, turning their positions into platforms for power. These women became advisors, mediators, and sometimes the hidden force steering their husbands' ambitions, all while balancing the delicate loyalties between their birth family and their new kin. Take the story of Sigrid the Haughty, a legendary figure from the sagas. Married to a powerful Swedish king, she was said to have refused suitors who didn't meet her standards, earning her nickname through sheer defiance. Once wed, Sigrid didn't fade into the background. She advised her husband on alliances, reportedly pushing him to strengthen ties with neighboring clans to secure trade routes. Her influence wasn't just domestic. She shaped political moves that echoed across Scandinavia. The sagas describe her as a woman who spoke boldly. Her counsel sought during tense councils where jarls debated war or peace. Her story shows how a princess could wield authority without ever lifting a sword. Another figure, Alfhild, daughter of a Danish king, married into a Norwegian clan to cement a fragile truce. The sagas hint that she hosted feasts where she subtly swayed opinions, using hospitality to broker deals or soothe egos. She'd listen to warriors' boasts, then quietly suggest strategies to her husband, like fortifying a key trading post to outmaneuver rivals. Such women were often the glue in their new households, managing resources like grain or silver to ensure the clan's survival through harsh winters. Their role extended beyond the hearth. They were diplomats in their own right, navigating the egos of ambitious men. Archaeological finds underscore this influence. Runestones, like one from Uppland, Sweden, praise women for their roles in upholding family honor, often linking them to alliances forged through marriage. A grave in Birka, containing a woman buried with scales and weights, suggests she controlled trade or wealth, a key aspect of clan power. These princesses weren't just ornamental, they were integral to their clan's prosperity, often acting as the voice of reason when tempers flared. Yet their influence came with risks. Overstepping could brand them as meddlers, threatening their status or even their lives. These women walked a fine line, using wit and charm to shape outcomes while staying within the bounds of their roles. Their marriages placed them at the heart of power struggles. But it was their ability to maneuver through these challenges that made them legends. Next, we'll dive into the dangers they faced when alliances crumbled, and how some turned betrayal into opportunity. In the dim light of a longhouse, a Viking princess grips the armrest of her chair, her heart pounding as whispers of treachery spread among the gathered warriors. Her marriage, meant to bind two clans in peace, now teeters on the edge of collapse, threatening to drag her family and her into a vortex of vengeance. For Viking princesses, the stakes of their strategic marriages were sky high, and when alliances crumbled, the fallout could be catastrophic. These women faced dangers that went beyond the battlefield, navigating a world where broken promises could lead to exile, bloodshed, or even death. Their stories, etched in the sagas and hinted at in archaeological finds, reveal the razor-thin line they walked, where loyalty was tested, and survival demanded unshakable resolve. The Viking world thrived on trust, but trust was fragile when power was at stake. A princess married to seal an alliance often found herself in a precarious position, caught between her birth family's expectations and her new clan's demands. If her husband or his kin broke the terms of the marriage, say, by raiding her family's lands or seizing disputed territory, she could be blamed, her loyalty questioned by both sides. The sagas tell of Thora, a princess from a minor Norwegian clan, wed to a powerful jarl in Denmark to secure a trade agreement. When her husband's men attacked her brother's ships, claiming it was just business, Thora was accused of failing to control her husband. The saga describes her desperate journey back to Norway, pleading for peace, only to find her family preparing for war. Her story shows how a princess could become a scapegoat, her role as a peace pledge turning into a lightning rod for blame when alliances soured. Betrayal didn't always come from the groom's side. Sometimes a princess's own family could undermine her position. In the Eyrbyggja saga, a woman named Thurid, married to a rival chieftain to end a feud, faced disaster when her brothers continued raiding her husband's lands, breaking the truce her marriage was meant to secure. Stranded in a hostile household, Thurid had to navigate her in-laws' growing suspicion, with some even accusing her of spying for her kin. The saga paints her as a quick thinker, using her knowledge of herbal remedies to win favor with her husband's mother, slowly rebuilding trust. But the strain was immense. She lived in constant fear of being cast out or worse, her status hanging by a thread. These stories highlight the isolation a princess could face, far from home, surrounded by potential enemies. Archaeological evidence sheds light on the precarious lives of these women. A runestone in Sweden, known as the Odendisa stone, commemorates a woman who likely died young, possibly in exile after a failed marriage alliance. The inscription, raised by her family, speaks of her as beloved, but the lack of detail about her husband's clan suggests a rift, perhaps a broken pact. Similarly, graves of high-status women, like one found in Gotland, with sparse grave goods compared to others, hint at lives cut short or statuses diminished, possibly due to political fallout. These finds suggest that when marriages failed, princesses could lose everything: land, honor, even their lives, especially if they were widowed or abandoned in a hostile territory. Yet, some princesses turned betrayal into opportunity, using their wits to survive and even thrive. The saga of Ingebjorg Finnsdottir tells of a princess married to a Scottish earl to secure Viking influence in the British Isles. When her husband allied with a rival Norse clan, breaking his vows to her father, Ingebjorg didn't crumble. She leveraged her connections, sending messages to her kin through traders and rallying support to pressure her husband into honoring the original alliance. Her actions, the saga notes, preserved her family's honor and secured her a place of respect in her husband's court. Such stories show how princesses, even in the face of betrayal, could wield soft power through negotiation, alliances, or sheer charisma to protect themselves and their kin. The dangers didn't end with political betrayal. Physical threats loomed large, especially in clans where feuds ran deep. A princess might face hostility from her husband's kin, who saw her as an outsider, or even violence if tensions escalated. The saga of Ragnhild Sigurdsdottir recounts a chilling moment when her husband's brother, suspecting her of plotting with her father, threatened her life during a feast. Ragnhild's response was to publicly gift him a fine cloak, a gesture that shamed him into backing down while winning the crowd's approval. Her quick thinking turned a deadly moment into a display of strength, but it underscores the constant vigilance required to survive in such a volatile role. These tales of peril reveal the true cost of the marriages Viking princesses entered. They weren't just trading crowns for love or duty. They were stepping into a high-stakes game where betrayal could come from any side. Their ability to navigate these dangers, whether through diplomacy, cunning, or resilience, determined not only their survival, but also the fate of their clans. As we move to the final chapter, we'll see how these women's triumphs and tragedies shaped lasting legacies, cementing their place as the unsung architects of the Viking Age. In the fading glow of a northern sunset, a Viking princess stands on a rocky cliff, her eyes tracing the horizon where her choices have shaped the fate of kingdoms. These women, who traded crowns for dangerous marriages, didn't just navigate the treacherous waters of Viking politics. They left an indelible mark on history, their legacies woven into the sagas, runestones, and the very foundations of Scandinavian society. Their stories reveal why they embraced such perilous unions, not just for survival, but to forge dynasties, secure peace, and wield power in a world where every alliance was a gamble. This final chapter unveils the full scope of their impact, from the triumphs that built nations to the tragedies that echoed through generations, showing how their courage and cunning reshaped the Viking Age. The Viking princesses were not passive pawns in their marriages. They were architects of their own destinies, using their roles to influence outcomes that rippled far beyond their lifetimes. Consider Gunhild, known as the Mother of Kings, whose multiple marriages tied her to some of the most powerful men in Norway. The sagas portray her as a formidable figure, sometimes vilified as a schemer, but undeniably influential. After marrying King Eric Bloodaxe, she bore several sons who became kings, cementing her family's grip on power. When Eric was exiled, Gunhild didn't retreat. She travelled with him, negotiating with foreign courts and rallying supporters to reclaim their status. Her story shows how a princess could turn a marriage's risks into opportunities, building a dynasty through sheer tenacity. Yet, her reputation as a ruthless manipulator in the sagas also hints at the challenges these women faced. Their ambition could make them targets, painted as villains when they overstep the delicate boundaries of their roles. Another towering figure is Astrid, a Swedish princess whose marriage to King Olaf of Norway was meant to seal peace between their realms. The Heimskringla saga describes her as a mediator who smoothed tensions between her husband and her brother, the Swedish king. When disputes over trade routes threatened war, Astrid hosted councils, using her dual loyalty to broker compromises. Her efforts helped stabilize the region, allowing both kingdoms to prosper through shared access to Baltic trade. But her story also reveals the personal cost. Torn between her birth family and her husband's ambitions, she lived in constant negotiation. Her every word weighed for its diplomatic impact. Her success lay in her ability to balance these loyalties, ensuring her name was etched into history as a peacemaker. The archaeological record amplifies these tales. Runestones across Scandinavia, like the one at Jelling in Denmark, honor women like Thyra, celebrated as Denmark's strength for her role in unifying the kingdom through her marriage to Gorm the Old. These stones weren't just memorials. They were public declarations of a woman's contribution to her clan's legacy. Graves, too, tell their stories. The Oseberg ship burial, with its rich array of goods, from a carved sleigh to weaving tools, suggests a woman of immense status, possibly a queen or priestess, whose marriage elevated her family's prestige. Another find, the Birka warrior grave, once thought male but now identified as female, shows a woman buried with weapons, perhaps a princess who wielded martial influence through her union. These artifacts prove that Viking princesses were not just brides but key players in their society's power structure. Yet, the dangers of these marriages were ever present, and not all stories ended in triumph. The sagas recount women like Ingebjorg, whose marriage to a rival chieftain was meant to end a feud, but instead ignited one when her husband broke the truce. Cast out by both families, she faced exile, her status stripped away. Such tales reveal the precariousness of these unions. When alliances failed, princesses could become scapegoats, blamed for political missteps. Others faced physical danger. A princess married into a hostile clan might find herself isolated, surrounded by distrustful in-laws. The saga of Gudrun Osvifersdottir in the Laxdæla saga is a stark example. Her multiple marriages, each meant to secure her family's position, led to betrayals and feuds that left her widowed and grieving, yet she emerged as a figure of resilience, managing her estate and shaping her sons' futures. So why did these princesses trade their crowns for such dangerous marriages? It was about more than duty. It was about power, legacy, and survival in a world where clans rose and fell on the strength of their alliances. Their marriages were strategic gambles, offering the chance to unite kingdoms, secure trade, or end wars. But they also required immense courage, as each vow carried the risk of betrayal, exile, or death. These women didn't just accept their fates, they shaped them, using their intellect and charisma to navigate a brutal world. Some, like Gunhild, built dynasties, others, like Astrid, forged peace. And even those who faced tragedy, like Ingebjorg, showed resilience that inspired the sagas. Their stories, preserved in stone and song, reveal a truth. Viking princesses were not just daughters or wives, they were power brokers, whose choices defined an era. As we close this tale, their legacy lingers in the fjords and runestones of Scandinavia, a testament to their strength. If you've been gripped by this journey through the Viking Age, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Did these princesses' stories surprise you? Your support means everything to us, and we'd love to hear what you want to explore next. Until then, keep chasing the stories that shape our past.